Next, I'm going to introduce one of my mentors. I know everything that I know about herbal medicine is because of this woman. She's amazing. She's authored several books. Including Sexual Herbal and Addiction Free Naturally. She teaches here in Boulder at Naropa University as well as several other institutes, both nationally and internationally. She blogs for the Huffington Post and Care To, as well as has authored many books and DVDs. She's been a faculty mentor for the Naropa Alliance for Psychedelic Studies and is an herbalist and natural health consultant for over 40 years. So I'm pleased to introduce Miss Brigitte Mars.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's wonderful to see this happening. I'm just amazed at the progress our culture is making, and I thank you all for being part of it. As Robert said, I do teach herbal medicine at Naropa, and I'm the author of 13 books. And several years ago, Naropa asked me if I would teach a drug education class. They were seeing that the just say no thing wasn't really working that well, and said, why don't you teach a class on just say how to avoid damage, how to avoid students ending up in the mental hospital or getting expelled from school. So you're going to make my PowerPoint come up here. Super, great. I'm so delighted. And then to make the pictures change, I press just that.
Space bar, right? We're waiting for...
Okay, technology. Okay. Here, I'll just smell some essential oils while I get ready.
It's resourcing.
Well, while we're waiting for this to load up, I will say that the whole idea of using psychoactive substances in a safe and sacred way has always been an interest of mine. And I've been on the planet long enough to have hung out with Dr. Timothy Leary. His wife, one of the several wives he had, Rosemary, was my daughter Sunflower's godmother. I also sponsored Terrence McKenna to come to Boulder several times. Thank you. So looks like we're up here. And I was always very interested in how these could be used as tools for enhancing consciousness. And we know that the idea of using psychedelics is actually something very inherent in cultures. We see children spinning around on the playground or wanting to go to the amusement park. And that's really an attempt to alter consciousness. So my partner, Bethy Lovelight, and I have worked on a concept, a template for creating a safe set and setting, and we're using the acronym EPIC. And so EPIC, if we're going to do these substances, how can it be a really positive experience, not something that degenerates into overuse or abuse, but how could this be really a tool for enhancing life? So the first letter is E in EPIC, and it's all about education. So if you were going to take a substance, maybe you've heard about something, it would be wise to read about it. I'll be talking about a site called Arrowid, but it may be wise to read about what's a safe dosage, what's a middle dosage, a light dosage, an intense dosage. What are some of the physiological effects? It might also be wise to talk to other people who've done it. You know, when I hear reports like, oh, wow, I became a molecule in the side of a building for 10,000 years, that doesn't sound that fun to me. So I might want to leave that one behind. And, you know, what are some of the effects? Knowing that perhaps it's normal for your pupils to be dilated or for your blood pressure to be elevated, rather than freaking out like, oh, my pupils are so big. You know, just know that that does happen. And then the P is for prepare, preparation. When I used to live with Rosemary Leary, I do want to say I'm a mother and grandmother, which I also think has given me some wonderful life experience. But when I lived with Rosemary Leary, and we knew that we were going to have what we called a session or a psychedelic ceremony, very often in tune with, a full moon or some event like summer solstice or something like that, we would spend several days preparing, and that might getting the house totally clean, stocking the refrigerator with really healthful, nourishing food. As a matter of fact, part of the preparation should really be to be in really great health. If you're, of course, certainly using these things as a tool for healing can be done, but if you have prepared yourself by having, French fries and a milkshake right beforehand, you might really feel polluted, and that might really affect and cloud your ability to go really far and have a really deep experience. Preparation might also be what kind of supplies do you want to have nearby? The last thing you want to be doing is like, I have to go in the attic or in the garage to find some kind of art supplies, or we need to drive in the car to go get watermelon because we're all craving watermelon. You really want to be respectful of the laws, and if you're in that open, sensitive state, really being out in public or going in a car might not really be kind to yourself or to other people who might even pick up on they're acting a little weird. But paying attention to what you eat, maybe even what you wear, clothes that are comfortable and sensuous and maybe even easy to get in and out of. But really, while you're getting prepared, it's really an opportunity to think about the adventure that awaits. And something that's been brought up as well, we used to call it set and setting, and I've heard Daniel talk about set, setting, and skill. And so when you're thinking about creating an amazing set and setting, especially for people who are new to this terrain, the idea of having a guide present, someone who is familiar with the territory, maybe someone who's not even going to imbibe any medicine themselves, but someone who could be there to really troubleshoot, like, I know you're looking for a CD, but I think the bathtub is running, or maybe they're going to go sit with you while you take a bath because, water and hot tubs and things like that might not really be safe for someone to do by themselves, especially if they're really far out there. So having a guide, a trusted person, and I also think it's really a good idea to have an agreement with the guide that sexual activity is not going to be done, even if the person who is on medicine, starts feeling like they want to have sexual energy. Something that I've always told myself is never decide to sleep with somebody for the first time while you're on medicine. You might have already made that decision while you weren't on anything that it's appropriate, but you don't want to make that decision when you're at this moment of, at oneness, because it might not really be right for you tomorrow. So keep that in mind. Prepare. Do your feng shui. Intention is really important, what you intend. And so your intention is really looking at yourself and going within and saying, why am I doing this? Just because a substance is available doesn't mean it's the right time to do it. Just because all your friends are doing it might not mean it's the right time to do it. So why are you doing this? What is your intention? Is it for healing? Is it to let go of creative block? Is it to feel more love and compassion? Is it for some psychological healing like post-traumatic stress we've been talking about? So your intention might even be something that you share. I'm a big believer, and I know that for a lot of young people, the idea of doing these substances with 10,000 people at a Spangle concert seems like an everyday normal thing, but maybe I'm a little old-fashioned, but I feel that set and setting also includes being with a small group of people that you really know and trust. Because when the veils of perception are lifted, you might really see through, I don't really feel safe with this person. I really, we don't really resonate. So when you're with a group of people, you might each share your intention, and by sharing your intention, it helps you to come back to it. So in the experience, if it gets really deep and profound and you say, you know, what's going on? You can always call yourself back to your intention. And it might also be something that when the experience is over, that the group of people reconvene, hence the word coalesce. So how are you going to bring it all together? Maybe you want to talk about, was your intention fulfilled? Did you get some answers to what you were looking for? So coalescing is also about coming into union with your intention and having some time to integrate this into your life. So it's not just about, you know, going to the far reaches of the universe, but gaining some experience so that when you come back, you get to live at a higher level. Because you might never really come back in exactly the same place. Hopefully, it's going to be better. So we have a picture here of, you know, children playing, people meditating, people dancing. You know, one of the things I do want to say is that there are many ways to alter consciousness. And when I found one of my teenagers, you know, with some cannabis, it wasn't like she was grounded forever, but I said, you know, I really want you to make a list of other ways that you can alter consciousness too. I want you to be aware that there's chanting and yoga and kundalini and meditation and writing poetry and spinning and dancing and writing poetry. So we don't want to get stuck in any one modality. And I think all those things are wonderful, and some of them might even be wonderful combined with various psychoactive substances. So, you know, I think sometimes people think that the whole psychedelic movement was something that was started in the 60s, but we know that around the world, most tribal cultures have had some sort of use of psychoactive substances, and very often it might even be an initiation for young people. In our culture, we don't really have any usual forms of recognizing that a young person is now an adult. And unfortunately, young people often make up their own ways of making themselves an adult, and it might not really be a very smart thing. Oh, let's take 4 hits of mescaline with a, you know, drink a 6-pack of beer and drive to Denver to a headbanger concert. And that really might not be the best use of that opportunity. So, you know, I'm using the word Shah-human because very often in tribal cultures, the shaman or the Shah woman, the medicine woman or man, was also a spiritual leader. They might really be like a parent to the entire tribe. They certainly would know about healing plants. They might have observed what the animals eat. And we do know that animals often use psychoactive substances, everything from gorillas to rabbits to deer. People that grow cannabis outside know that you're going to have animals that want to eat it. So they're certainly not afraid to do that. We also know that shamanic use also looked at the structure of plants, you know, plants that look a certain way, that look like certain parts of the body might indicate what part of the body they're good for. So I think of like cauliflower for the brain and blueberries for the eyes and seaweed for the hair. But the use of psychoactive substances was also a method that shamans would imbibe to get more information about plants that could be used for healing. I lived for 2.5 years in a teepee in the Ozarks in Missouri many years ago, and I certainly found that when I imbibed certain sacred plant medicine, it was really like I could see and feel. If I ate a leaf, I could feel that it was increasing my hearing, or I could feel that it was increasing circulation to my heart, or improving my visual acuity. So the idea that these substances have been used to perhaps help the tribal survival and improve our health by helping us to be better able to attune to what I like to call the plant queendom. So remember your intention. And it might be a good idea to write your intention down. Having a journal can be a really good guide. I like to encourage people when they're in a sacred ceremony to minimize talking and rapping. It really tends to just bring you down and keep you, very grounded. It doesn't mean you can't talk or have to be totally silent, but I think we let a lot of chit-chat get in the way of having a deep, profound experience. So the idea that we're going to choose our words carefully and not to be talking about things that happened in the past, use our words for really appreciating and being fully present might be a better use of our time. So one of the things that Timothy Leary used to talk a lot about was imprinting, so that when we are in a really sensitive state, anything that we expose our consciousness to could really imprint upon us. And so the idea that someone might want to turn on the news or watch a sitcom or go to a basketball game or something like that, that whatever you do during that experience is going to imprint and really affect you on a much deeper level. So think seriously, perhaps even ahead of time, by preparing what you want to have around you. What music, pick out the music ahead of time. Really select who you want to be with. And another thing a guide can do is really help make sure that if someone answers the door or things that might not be safe, such as candles burning and such. So one of the wonderful gifts that Dr. Leary contributed, along with Ralph Metzner, was they took an ancient text called the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu in about 600, I believe it's 600 BC. And one of the things that they did is they went to India with about 9 different versions of the Tao Te Ching. And they believed that there was so much wisdom in this book that they were going to do an upgraded, updated, psychedelically translated version of the Tao Te Ching that could be used as a guide and read during the psychedelic experience. For some reason, during my years with Rosemary Leary, no one was really able to read during the psychedelic experience except for me. So I was often given the job of reading the prayers. So I'm going to share one prayer with you from the psychedelic prayers. Let there be simple, natural things during the session. Let there be simple, natural things to contact during the session. Hand-woven cloth, uncarved wood, ancient music, flowers, growing things, burning fire, a touch of earth, a splash of water, fruit, good bread, cheese, fermenting wine, sacred smoke, candles, temple incense, a warm hand, fish swimming, anything which is over 500 years old. Of course, it is always best to be secluded in nature. So again, in choosing our set and setting, it is wonderful to be in nature, but it can also have our perils. If you don't have a guide, you might think it's totally okay to take your clothes off at Chautauqua Park, and it really might not be okay. You might think that you can leap between, tall boulders in a single bound, and that might not really be okay as well. So having a guide can really help keep the space safe, talk to the park rangers, make sure you keep your clothes on, and of course do the driving when it's time to go back home. So one more poem from the psychedelic prayers, The Message of Posture. During the experience, observe your body, mandala of the universe. Observe your body of ancient design, holy temple of consciousness. Observe its structured wonders, skin, hair, tissue, vein, muscle, net of nerve. Observe its message. Does it merge or does it strain? Does it rest serene on sacred ground or tilt, propped up on wire and sticks? On tiptoe, one cannot stand for long. tension retards the flow. Observe the mandala of your body. So again, spending time in nature is totally glorious. It may look a little bit more like this, but that's okay. We don't mind. I called this slide Tools for Transformation. Things that really are amazing for you, that can be very healing, can even be more amazing during the psychedelic experience. If you've never had a massage on mushrooms, I encourage you to try it sometime. It's always best if you could have a trusted massage therapist come to your home, for example, again, minimizing driving or contact with the other world. And also, if you can feel that they're trusted and they're not going to judge you for this, you want someone who's really going to feel like this is comfortable, this is okay, I'm familiar with the territory. So massage can be amazing. And yes, I have a picture of someone relaxing in the bath, but I also want to say that having someone to be alert to safety issues. If you're soaking in the bathtub, soaking in the hot tub, know that hot water and deep water could be a dangerous mix, especially for someone who's not really familiar with the landscape. Also be aware that when you do take a substance in a new and different place, it might really intensify the experience. Being somewhere that you're familiar with is going to feel perhaps less overwhelming than being somewhere you've never been before. So again, all of this is part of thinking of your set and setting. I also have a picture of a woman with some oracles. And one of my favorite oracles is the Inner Child card. It was designed by someone who lived at Findhorn. And so oracles might be, let's do an I Ching reading. Let's pick a tarot card. Let's pick a rune or something that you're familiar with. Because in your journal, you might find that whatever you draw has really special meaning and that it really, gets home. So again, if you might find that having a table or an altar with some tools for transformation available really can make for a very smooth experience. And I also have some natural art supplies here. The reason I wanted to stress natural art supplies is when you're in intensified conscious state, things like chemical smells, magic markers, the smell of turpentine and paints might really be overwhelming. You may be so sensitive. And so, finding the beeswax crayons and the hemp paper or something like that might be a lot easier. Another psychedelic pioneer, friend of many of ours, is Alex Gray. And I happen to know that during the experience, he does little sketches during the experience, but when it comes to doing his actual, big paintings, he's usually, not on something so intense. So tools for transformation. And it's also been found that during the psychedelic experience, a phenomenon known as synesthesia may occur. So synesthesia is where the senses cross over, where colors have smells, and smells have colors, and so forth. It's really a very profound experience. And it's also possible that one might experience more synchronicity, where things that seem like the chances are 1 in a million occur. I remember one time thinking, the phone hadn't even rung, but I just picked up the phone and there was my sister. It's like, just that kind of like knowing that it's time to pick up the phone. However, I don't suggest answering the phone when you're on medicine. Your poor mother, she's going to say like, what's wrong? You sound different. And you could really like worry them because, your mom might be able to tell. So, but be prepared for synesthesia. And another thing to do in your preparation of your altar is to think about having something for each one of your senses. Maybe some really beautiful art books like, Alex Gray or Martina Hoffman, Roberto Venoso. There's a number of fantastic realist artists that you might be familiar with, Gilbert Williams, Amanda Sage, Crystal Star, I think her name is. So having something that is spiritually uplifting to imprint upon could also have a very powerful effect in helping to direct your consciousness to a higher place. Aromatherapy, it's great all the time. When you smell something, the molecules of that essential oil go right to your brain, but the delight of smelling essential oils while you're under the influence of medicine might be even more profound. I'm going to read a little poem here again from the Psychedelic Prayers. The air chakra, rapture, azure blue. Can you float through the universe of your body and not lose your way? Breathing. Can you drift into free air? Breathing. Breath of life. Ethereal bliss. Inspiration. Can you rise on the trembling vibration of inhale, exhale? Breathing. Breathing. Breath of life. Ascend the fragile thread of life into cloud blue bliss. Spiral up through soft atmosphere. Breathing. Breathing. Catch that exact second between in-breath and out-breath. Just there, can you float beyond life and death? At that exact second, now, azure blue. So another tool of transformation that I like a lot are color therapy glasses. It's a lot of fun. You get together with 7 friends, you have 7 pairs of color therapy glasses, find a nice place to sit somewhere in a park, and you spend maybe 10 minutes wearing each different color and kind of go through the chakras and find like, wow, this is a really great tool, and I'm stimulating different parts of my body by seeing the world through yellow, red, indigo, violet. For many years, I've often found that coloring sacred mandalas, and I know this is sort of a trend right now. You've seen many of these adult coloring books in the stores around the holiday season, but I've often thought that coloring a mandala can be a very meditative technique. Some of them are even done as stained glass, and at the end of your journey, you could put it in a window to remind you of the space that you were in and what you learned. So again, just make sure you don't have art implements that are too toxic. And of course, maybe drawing some of your own artwork could also be beneficial. So the appropriate music is really important. And I've long felt that some music passes the acid test and some doesn't. I remember Stephen Gaskin one time was with his partner, and they both felt like they could see blood coming out of the walls, and they were a little disturbed by that. And Stephen said to his wife, Ina May, what album is that? And she said, it's Let It Bleed by the Rolling Stones. And he said, well, take it off, because the walls were bleeding. And I know you sometimes hear about these things, like, is that a hallucination? But I think that we very often pick up on the intention behind music. And music that might sound good a lot of the time might really sound in a sensitive psychoactive state, that it's really coming from a place of ego and self-aggrandizement, and it's not really helping you to ascend. Another psychedelic prayer, the auditory chakra, sound waves, uncover lotus membrane, sound waves, sound waves, sound waves, tremble tattoo of impulse, sympatonic vibrations, float along liquid-filled canals. The single note, meteor of delight, collides with quivering membrane. Fuse, spin, slowly, round eternal note, along network ear tone, down vibration thread. Who ear? You are. Vibration, string of wire, sound waves. So things like meditation, dance, yoga, qigong, things that are good for your body, because I don't believe that these states of heightened perception have to leave us feeling depleted. If you drink, a fresh pressed nettle juice during the experience, or allow your taste buds to savor like the best quality organic cantaloupe or something, you're going to feel that there's an energy and a resonance from that, and that the experience can even be healing, leaving you feeling better the next day rather than burnt out. So that's what we're going for. So I wanted to just show a little picture of the pineal gland. The pineal gland is a gland that is deep inside of our brains, and it is a light receptor. We know that our pineal glands make melatonin. We also know that our pineal glands, during states of altered consciousness, secrete a substance called dimethyltryptamine. I'll talk more about that. But taking care of our pineal gland, being in good quality light, sleeping in more total darkness, and not having a lot of lights can all enhance the function of our pineal gland. Terrence McKenna used to say, if they really wanted to be serious about the drug war, they would put all humans in jail, because humans are abounding with psychoactive compounds. Because we do produce dimethyltryptamine, we do produce dopamine, epinephrine, adrenaline, serotonin. So, you know, we're just all a walking display of entheogens. So it's also been found that many of the psychoactive chemicals are very similar in their structure to serotonin, that they contain an indole molecule. And it's believed that when these substances are used, that our serotonin production goes on hold for a little while, so that serotonin is a great compound, but it also enables us to, keep up and go to work and get the job done and, do everything we need to do. So when the serotonin supply is not happening for a while, it's like we see things with even greater perception. And William Blake said it best. He said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, we would see all things as they are, infinite. And so the doors of perception, of course, was where the Doors got their name, the band. And of course, Aldous Huxley himself was a great pioneer in psychoactives. And mescaline was one of the first compounds he tried. And I know that some people who worked for Disney, who were experimenting with these substances under the watch care of Aldous Huxley, got to work on the movie Fantasia. So in case you're, Fantasia 1, so in case you're wondering, like, well, that movie's really far out, yes, that does pass the acid test. So I love some of the psychedelic imagery here. DMT, dimethyltryptamine. It is a compound that not only occurs in our pineal gland, but in our cerebrospinal fluid, in our urine, and it is really enhanced in its production when we are born and when we give birth, especially in a vaginal birth. But it also comes into play during times of starvation, fasting. It's also present when we die. And so very often the psychedelic experience has been likened to an ego death, a letting go of the old and a rebirth of the new. Of course, dimethyltryptamine is a substance that people use. It's sometimes smoked. It's not orally active. It's very strong. But it does occur in our bodies, and nature abounds with it. It's found in the mimosa tree. The state of Illinois is covered with it, Illinois bundleweed. So there, it's everywhere. Ayahuasca is a substance, it's actually several substances, usually made from two plants, Psychotria viridis and Banisteriopsis caapi. It has two main chemicals, the dimethyltryptamine, as well as something called harmaline. They wanted to call the harmaline telepathine because it makes you more telepathic, but it was found that it had already been identified in passion flower, and it was already called harmaline. So ayahuasca is also known as vine of the soul, the visionary vine. one thing that another psychedelic pioneer, Andrew Weil, said that I really appreciate, he said, substances that have the potential to make you vomit have a very low potential for abuse. And I've always appreciated that because there are a number of these substances that may make you vomit. And you might think, oh, that just sounds terrible, the idea that I might throw up, especially in a room full of people. But in the Native American tradition, it's often said, you get sick in order to get well. And it's not like you throw up everywhere. Usually you come with like a bag or a bio bag or a little device to put that into. But very often people experience that the vomiting might actually be programming that we want to get rid of, like jealousy or bitterness or hatred or something that's no longer serving us. So getting sick, it might come from a real deep place in you, but it might also be what you need to do to totally let go and get on with life. This artwork down here on the bottom is from a well-known, beloved artist, Martina Hoffman. Her art is on display at Tonics, one of my favorite hangout places. Peyote is a cactus. It contains mescaline, that's the active ingredient in it. And it's a very slow-growing cactus. In the wild, it can take peyote up to 13 years to be mature. If it's grown in cultivation, it's about 6 years. So there is certainly concern about peyote. It's a very bitter herb, but it was once used as a pharmaceutical. It was in the American Dispensatory of Medical Drugs, and it was used for its antibiotic activity, its ability to help during childbirth, to facilitate it. And some might say that this is a bit racist because it is legal to use peyote if you are a member of the Native American Church and at least 1/4 part Native American. But that would be like telling all the Jewish or Christian people in Boulder that you can't really practice Buddhism. So I think that we all find spiritual paths that resonate with us, and they might be different than the path we grew up with. It might really be an inclusion of the past, but it might also be an expansion as well. So peyote is one of the only cactuses that doesn't have any spines on it. And mescaline is also found in the San Pedro cactus, which is a very common plant to see growing in Mexican restaurants. So I wanted to point out that in ancient Greece, there was something called the Eleusinian Mysteries. And it represented the triple goddess, Demeter, who is like the mother goddess, and her daughter Persephone, who was given by Zeus to Hades and to go into the underworld. It also involved Hecate, who was like the crone and the mistress of potions and poisons and hallucinogens. And what's really interesting is that these Eleusinian mysteries were practiced for about 2,000 years in the ancient Greek world. And a lot of the scholars that we read in high school and college partook in the Eleusinian mysteries. People like Cicero and Plato and Sophocles. It was a path that was open to women as well as slaves, as long as you had never murdered someone and that you could speak Greek. So anyways, the Eleusinian mysteries, we know that they drank a beverage that was made with fermented barley. Now we know that ergot grows on fermented barley and fermented rye. So they drank a beverage called kykeon, which was a very strong potion. It also had a type of wild pennyroyal in the mix and was very similar to what we might understand as lysergic acid, the kykeon. Bethy Lovelight, will you pass around some of my flyers? I'm passing around flyers of classes on herbal medicine that I teach. Here's another picture by Martina Hoffman in the middle, Lysergic Summer Dreams. So Albert Hoffman was a pharmacognosist. He worked for Sandoz Pharmaceuticals in Basel, Switzerland, because he wanted to work with natural compounds. That's him right there. And he was working with lysergic acid as a possible remedy for migraine headaches, and he had a dream that he should go back and look at the 25th experiment. So he pulled some out, and he actually got a little bit on his fingertips, and he felt really weird and said, oh, I better ride my bike home. So there's a picture of him on his bike. And I also have a picture of Timothy Leary in the bottom left there. So most of you know that Dr. Leary was a Harvard professor. He did a study with psilocybin mushrooms in a prison population and found that the rate of people going back to prison after they'd been let out that had experienced psilocybin had been greatly decreased. And he eventually was expelled from Harvard. At one time, he was running for governor of California against Ronald Reagan, and it seemed that he was going to win. When they arrested him, it was actually his daughter that had some cannabis. He said, no, it's mine. I'll take the blame like a dutiful father. And they sentenced him to 30 years in prison. They gave him a psychological test called the Leary test, which he wrote. And he really embarrassed the American government by escaping from a prison that had maximum security. And that's a whole nother story. If you want to read more about that, there's a great book called Flashbacks. He died a few years ago, and most of you are familiar with his adage, turn on, tune in, drop out. But I want to say that later on in life, he turned that to turn on, tune in, boot up. Because he really encouraged us to learn about computers, that was going to be a way to connect us globally and help speed our evolution. There's a picture of Terrence Mckenna, the late, great Terrence. He did a lot of research on psilocybin, dimethyltryptamine. He was certainly a pioneer. He grew up in Peyote, Colorado. And Terrence was a living example of someone who could do so many psychoactives and be off-the-scale genius. Never have I met someone who had such a wide expanse of knowledge on history, anthropology, science. It was really unlike anything I've ever seen before. So he used to say, so many drugs, so little time. Mdma, I know that's our topic today. I have a picture of Sasha and his wife Ann Shulgin, I believe. He invented many compounds. Mdma was originally made as a weight loss drug, I believe in 1917, and it was originally made from sassafras and nutmeg, two wonderful herbs. So, really, herbal medicine is at the roots of, many wonderful, important medicines of today. And as an herbalist, I love using herbs for healing, herbs and food. I thought I would throw this in. I've not ever ingested Amanita Muscaria, but these mushrooms do grow here in Colorado, and I just wanted to illustrate that they are really part of our Christmas legend. In ancient Siberian culture, unfortunately, a lot of this has gotten replaced by alcohol, because when missionaries come into an area and they see that the natives have this way of altering consciousness, they try to get rid of it as quickly as possible, and then alcohol comes into play. But for many thousands of years, it was observed that the reindeer would eat the little red and white gifts under the tree. And even though the Amanita was quite strong, the shaman and up to 5 other people would drink the urine of the reindeer or drink the urine of the shaman, and then they would have these visions of, you open the little red and white gifts under the tree, and then you fly through the night on the reindeer. So go figure. Our Christmas tradition is a history of many, many different cultures. And they called it the fly killer because people would put bowls of milk out with Amanita in it, and they thought that the flies died, but they actually just lay on their backs for a little while and then they take off again. I have seen that. So some nice psychedelic art here. So this is a copy of the psychedelic prayers. Kimba Aram, who played at our last Psychedelic Shine, created the music for the psychedelic prayers, and I had the pleasure of reading the prayers on a CD that I have over here. You can also find it online. And then I did a little DVD called Sacred Psychoactives to educate people about how these things could be used in a safe setting. I also want to mention, when it comes down to education, there's a wonderful group called MAPS, which I know is, there's probably information about MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I want to mention the fine work of Zendo, where people learn to be present and hold space for people that may be having a difficult or an unusual experience. Dance Safe is a group that often has a presence at parties and raves where they can test substances, much like Robert Colbert was talking about. And then another great place for information is the website Arrowid. So again, before ingesting a substance, and it may not be appropriate, you should really find out what's a safe dosage, what's a mild dosage, what are the physiological effects. So learn everything you can, and this is a very balanced website that can give you information. This is a picture of a trip gone bad, you know, the difficult experience, and I like to use the term that a psychedelic emergency could often end up being a spiritual emergence. And so if someone is having a difficult time, it might be good to change the music. If they're inside, take them outside. If they're outside, to bring them inside. Remind them that it's not going to last. Maybe getting them to do something like dance or keep beat to the music. An ancient tradition is to hold an amethyst crystal. It's very grounding, to breathe deep, to remember your intention. And I know we just have a moment left. So the coalesce portion of this is integration. It could be a wonderful idea to take the day off the next day to integrate and reflect upon what happened. If we did that, I don't think we would have to do these substances so much. It might be, you know, I had this amazing experience, and now I'm going to take a day to reflect, to write in my journal, maybe to share with my close friends what happened, so that I really get what my intention was and I can embody it. And I would love it if a psychedelic culture is an opportunity to go into the world and make it a better place, if it can help bring about an end to warfare, the environmental awareness, the ability to work things out peacefully with one another. I always like the saying, you know, by their fruits you shall know them. And I see that we have a real opportunity to show that we can be a culture that can go deep, that can educate ourselves, use these substances, and do what we can to make a positive difference for conscious social change. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all. Hopefully you got a flyer. Thank you, Shine, and Daniel, and Allison, and Molly. I think maybe you have a few last announcements. We were right on time.
All right. Thank you so much, Brigitte. We really appreciate your fantastic presentation. Couple of things. On your way out the door, take some goodies with you. There's Valentine's in a basket, chocolates at the bottom, and also all of these little lovely coloring sheets. Bring them home for your kids to enjoy, so we can have fun with that. Some of the love letters that we posted, please share more if you can, and we might post them on our social media, Facebook. You'll see them soon. We're going to have to make a quick move out of this room, but please do join us in the restaurant. There's a lot of open benches right outside the door, and we'll be hanging around for a while if you have any questions or just want to chat. Thanks again, Katie, for your lovely art. She's still working hard for us, and it's turning out fabulous. Join us on March 13th. Our event that afternoon will be from 2 o'clock to 5, again on the topic of peyote. Have a lovely afternoon, make some love, and enjoy.